Hi, everyone. So welcome to the Summer of Health Webinar 2. Today is all about Nutrition 101. So we're going to be talking about hydration, macronutrients, phytonutrients, spices, what should be on your plate, and a special Friday Zoom event. So I'm super excited to tell you about that as well. So let's get started. I gotta there we go. Nutrition 101. All right, first thing is hydration. So water is incredibly important, as you probably already know. So let's first talk about why we want to hydrate, or what are some symptoms of dehydration. So the first obvious sign is going to be like darker urine. Sometimes you can even have a stronger urine smell, and that can be because of actually ketones coming through. So what that means is like you, if you're familiar with like the ketogenic diet, that's forcing ketones into your bloodstream. So essentially what that means is you're burning off your fat. And so that would also then mean that with the ketones, they'd be a little bit stronger, like sweeter smell. Other symptoms about dehydration, what I'm looking for is like headaches, pain or muscle tension, constipation, fatigue, brain fog, dry skin, even low blood pressure can be a cause of dehydration, because essentially what happens is you think of your circulatory system as a pump, and if there's less volume within that pump system, right, there's going to be less pressure because there's just not enough fluid circulating through to create the pressure. And so some symptoms of low blood pressure or hypotension would be dizziness, particularly from posture changes, meaning from sitting to standing or from laying down to standing. And some folks can even like see the white spots or get a little discombobulated. So I wanted to talk about like why this is so important, getting proper hydration. I want to talk about a case study. So I have a patient who was in a serious motor vehicle accident about 2 years ago, and she's been in quite significant pain. She's done chiropractic care. We were working with acupuncture as well, and regular massages. And because anytime you come see me, because I'm both a naturopathic physician and an acupuncturist, I can't help but to separate. I can't separate the two. So what that means then is I had to talk to her about hydration as one of the possible causes of her pain. So, right, the muscles need water because we're like 75% water. We're mostly made out of water. So we need that water in order to hydrate our body so that there's fluidity. Essentially, there's more fluids to lubricate the joints, the muscles, all that. And what happened is when I told her to increase her water intake, and she was only getting maybe, I think, 16 ounces a day, so 2 cups of water. Most of it was like other beverages. And so when she increased her water intake to the recommendation, which is half your body weight, approximately in ounces, then her body pain significantly reduced. Of course, we were also doing acupuncture, but water alone made a significant difference. And she noticed when she wasn't drinking enough water that all of her aches and pains started to come back a little bit more. And then of course, so the other important thing about continuing to drink water is because we lose water just from breathing, anytime we sweat, and then of course from urination and also from bowel movements. And so because we're constantly losing water, we need to replace that. So like I said, the general recommendation is about half your body weight in ounces, or commonly it's 8 ounces, so 8 glasses of water a day, which is approximately 64 ounces. And when you take into account that the average adult is approximately like 150 pounds, that is about half the body weight. There are a few exceptions to that rule, specifically for those in heart failure or cardiovascular concerns, because we don't want to put that extra strain on the heart. So please, in terms of water recommendations for specific ones, talk to your physician. All right, next I want to talk about timing of when to drink water. Really, it's throughout the day. So not just chugging a bunch of water at like, oh crap, at the end of the day, realizing that, oh, I haven't drank, so my glasses of water, so I'm just gonna drink them all right now. That's not gonna be as beneficial for you. Actually, what it'll do is just make you urinate it all out because you can't absorb it all. So it's important to pace yourself and drink throughout the day. And it's actually true when you start to feel thirsty, you're already dehydrated. So, right, it's best to kind of sip water throughout the day. Some tips to help you get through that is one, just drink water right upon awakening. That's actually this week's challenge. So every day this week, drinking a full glass of water upon waking is so beneficial for so many reasons. But one of the biggest things is one, your brain is basically like a sponge. And when you wake up, you can kind of think of it as a dry sponge, which every time I think about my brain as like a dry sponge, I creep out a little bit. I'm like, I need water. So drink water first thing in the morning. And what that's going to do is actually can help with fatigue and brain fog. It can also help to stimulate a bowel movement because we have this reflex that causes a bowel movement when we take in water, particularly first thing in the morning. Walking actually will also stimulate that same reflex. And so drinking water throughout the day is key. Some other tips is what I call like this water band trick. So for example, like this water bottle right here that I have is 500 mils or 16 ounces. And so what I know is that I need to drink about 4 to 5 of those. And so I'd have 4 or 5 rubber bands on them and then bring them down when I finish a bottle. And then by the time that I'm done with the day, I can keep track like, okay, this is how many I've had, with the goal, of course, making about the half your body weight in ounces. The other tricks is if that's not going to work for you, say you don't have a favorite water bottle that you like or you always drink out of, there's great apps. There's a Water Buddy app on the iPhone that will essentially allow you to, it gives reminders and it allows you to like feed a pet. So if you need some sort of external incentive, you can do it that way. So it's kind of like, I don't know if you're like familiar with like the Tamagotchis or something like that. It's like basically that, but on your phone. And the other thing is if you have like a Apple Watch or Fitbit, the ones that give you like the hourly reminders, like stand up or do deep breathing, you can use that as also a reminder to drink some water. And okay, that's basically what I want to talk about with hydration. Incredibly important. Please drink water. Oh, other thing I wanted to mention is that coffee is essentially negative water because it's dehydrating. And so what that means is it's a diuretic, which means it stimulates you to urinate. And so any diuretic, which is like all caffeine, is going to make you pee more, which means you're going to have more water loss. And so in order to make up for that, you need to put more water in. All right, let's talk macronutrients. So this is carbohydrates, it's the protein and the fat. So first we're going to talk carbohydrates. So, where did it go? There we go. There. Oh, so carbohydrates is sugar, glucose, fructose, galactose, etc., plus dietary fiber. And so what's so important is that we have is that fiber is what helps you to feed all your good bacteria. It also helps with your bowel movements because it adds more bulk. So fiber is important again for your bacteria health because it feeds them. So fiber is non-digestible plant material. And so in taking in the fiber, there's two types, the insoluble and the soluble fiber. The insoluble fiber comes out exactly as it came in, so you don't digest any of it. The soluble fiber, you are actually able to break down a little bit, mostly with the help of your gut flora. And so Let me talk a little bit first about low fiber diets and what happens in terms of your health, so you can understand the importance of why we need lots of fiber in our diet. And so low fiber diets are known to contribute to constipation, diverticulosis, or diverticulitis, and that's when you have little outpouchings within the colon. So essentially what that means is you have the colon, and then on the wall, there's a little pocket here. And the problem with that is that within that pocket, you can get food stuck in there, and now that food just sits there, right? Because it's not able to get out. And so now you can get inflammation, you can get infection, and therefore abdominal pain, and then maybe even surgery because of it. And so you can also have hormonal issues because of low fiber diets, because fiber is actually what will bind all your excess hormones. So I actually use fiber, recommend increasing fiber intake, particularly 2 tablespoons of ground flax seeds for those who have high estrogen, because the fiber will actually help to bind up any of the excess. And so it's really beneficial for hormonal issues, as well as, again, constipation and all your other gut health stuff. Having low fiber also means that you're having a slower transit time. And now that means, because transit time just means the time that it takes from for your food to come in and then out, right? So so having less fiber means that you're not moving as quickly, hence the constipation. Now take that into, now put that in the context of like your hormones, everything that the fiber binds. So fiber also binds excess cholesterol. So now if you don't have fiber in your diet to bind up the excess cholesterol and the hormones, you can now have, right, high cholesterol within your blood, which then can contribute to a bunch of other risk factors, particularly for the heart. And those things would normally be excreted had you had enough fiber. All right, so some soluble fiber types. So we have starches, such as starches, such as potatoes, well, a bunch of different vegetables, all your starchy vegetables, and pectin and guar gum. They're all digested by bacteria. They promote the growth of bacteria. They actually will slow down your stomach emptying, so they'll actually make you fuller longer as well. They also will slow glucose absorption. So for those who have blood sugar dysregulation concerns, like prediabetes or diabetes, having more fiber can help to slow down the blood sugar spikes and help to actually control your blood sugar. The other thing is, I talked about that, the cholesterol, and also, as well as, a lot of disturbance. Okay, hopefully it gets better. So the other thing with fiber, soluble fiber, is just to make sure that you're getting enough, and the actual recommendation is about 35 grams of fiber a day. And so what that, so there's apps, there's a Fitness Pal that will actually help you to track how much fiber, like all the macronutrient breakdown. So that can be really helpful. It's a free app, both on your phone as well as on the computer. The other thing I wanted to talk about here is carbohydrates. So not all carbs are made the same. So we have simple carbohydrates, which are really easy to break down, and they're easy to digest. Those are more commonly like, those are white potatoes. Actually, anything that has the bran removed, which means it's like white rice or white bread, those are turned into simple carbohydrates, because the bran is actually what helps. The bran is the fiber. So when you remove the fiber, you make it a simple carbohydrate. And they tend to spike your blood sugar, which is why I don't care for them too much, and prefer more so the complex carbohydrates. So complex carbohydrates take longer to break down. They're going to be, so it's, one of my favorite comparisons is simple carb would be a white potato, and a complex carb would be a sweet potato. And so just choosing, a sweet potato is going to be better for your health overall, because you're not going to spike your blood sugar as high. So these all also tend to be your beans, your nuts, your seeds. And again, they also contain fiber, and the fiber is incredibly important. Unless it's been processed and stripped, and then it acts again like a simple carbohydrate. The important thing though, when it comes to carbohydrates, is actually more specifically their glycemic index. So what is glycemic index? Glycemic index is when you take into account not only how the tendency of like the sugar breakdown, but also what the serving size is. So for example, like, well, we can go with like potatoes. So no, I don't want to do with that. One second, I need some water. Okay. So when it comes to glycemic index, it's how rapidly a carb turns into a sugar. And it doesn't take into account how much of that carb is in a typical serving. So this is where glycemic load comes in, and we'll talk about that on the next slide. But high glycemic index is basically when they tend to cause a higher rise in the blood sugar. There's less fiber, high sugar content. Again, that's going to be like cornflakes or potatoes or candies. And the lower glycemic foods, they have a lower rise in blood sugar. There's more fiber, which again is going to slow down the absorption rate, and they tend to have a lower sugar content because of that. So some good examples is the apple. So apple, yes, does have some simple sugars in it like fructose, but because of all the fiber, it's not going to spike your blood sugar as much as like potatoes or candy does, which also has the fructose in it. And berries are a great option for sweetness because they have the sugars, but they're really low in the glycemic index, which again really helpful for diabetes because we don't want to be spiking the blood sugar all over the place. All right, now let's talk about glycemic load. So glycemic index didn't take into account how much of the food you normally eat in order to raise your blood sugar level. So glycemic load estimates how much food will actually raise the blood glucose levels after eating it. And so the higher the glycemic load, the less fiber there is, and therefore the higher the risk of diabetes because you're just spiking your blood sugar, right? Whereas a low glycemic load diet is much more useful for weight loss because, right, it's going to have exactly the opposite. It's going to have more fiber. It's going to have, or less likely to spike, it's not going to spike your blood sugar as high. And actually, if you have foods that the glycemic load is less than 16, it's actually one of the most important variables in terms of keeping your weight management. So next, I want to talk about is protein. So protein is essential for life. It's actually, so protein or amino acids was actually, is actually the essential breakdown of it. But vitamins were actually misnamed because they thought that it was essential like all the amino acids were, and then we just haven't changed the name because vitamins, they're too ingrained in the system at this point. So protein is found, yes, in both animal and plant foods. And the difference we'll get into in a little bit, but I want to talk about essential amino acids. The essential amino acids can't be synthesized in our body. We have to consume them. Non-essential amino acids are very easily synthesized in the body because we use the other amino acids in order to make them. So those ones, if we don't consume them on a regular basis, we're going to be okay. What I want to talk about with animal protein in particular is that animal protein is a fantastic source of protein because it's got all of it. It's a complete protein source. The issue with plant-based, getting all of your protein from plants is that's a little bit trickier because they're not complete, which means they're lacking. They either don't have any of one amino acid or they just have very low amount of it. So then you have to find other sources in order to make a more complete protein source for your body. All right, let's talk fat. So I think there's, I think it's a little bit better now, but historically fat has always been demonized and, as something that we don't need excess of, which is true, but it's also incredibly important for our body. So fat, or in particular like cholesterol, is literally the breakdown, the building blocks for all of your hormones. It is the literally what all of your cell membranes are made out of. Your brain is mostly made out of fat. So if you don't have enough fat intake, you definitely can have brain fog, memory issues. You can have all the hormonal dysregulation as well, because you just don't have the precursor, right? If you don't have the ingredients to make something, you're definitely going to be deficient in it. And so that's where making sure you're getting high quality, healthy fats is incredibly important. With the fats, they prolong digestion. They actually contribute to satiety or fullness, so they'll actually make you feel fuller longer. Protein does the same exact thing. So whenever I talk with patients about diet, and in particular, I talk about meal spacing, and I'll actually talk more about that in next week's webinar when we talk all about digestion. But in order to increase fullness, I recommend generally to my patients increasing protein and the fat content within meals in order to keep you fuller longer. And let's see. And the other thing that's incredibly important about fat is that that's where all the fat soluble vitamins are stored. So one of our most loved fat soluble vitamins is vitamin D. So vitamin D is so incredibly important for our immune system, for our mood, for so many things. That if you aren't getting it through the fat, then you can get deficiencies from that. So one great source of vitamin D is codfish, or cod liver oil is one of the main supplements that is used, or other fish oils. And so I want to talk about now, the other thing about that is that it provides taste, right? So I always get the grass-fed meats because their fat is actually not contaminated with all of the toxins, because all the toxins that get injected into the poor little animals get stored in the fat most often. And so when you then consume the conventional grown or the grain-fed, then that fat, has been studies showing that the proportion of the foods is the proportion of the oils is different, meaning that they're more inflammatory, which is this slide right here. So you can see that omega-6 right here, those are the a little bit more inflammatory. And then you have omega-3 on this side, and the omega-3s are our fish oils, particularly EPA right here and DHA. So those are incredibly anti-inflammatory. And so you can see here that the omega-6, right, they come from like your oils, your vegetable oils, and also meat. And then you have the arachidonic acid. So that's extremely inflammatory. That is specifically from meats and organs. And with that, the biggest thing is that omega-3s and omega-6s are on the same pathway. So what that means is they're competing for the enzymes right here. And so if you have more of omega-6s, it's going to outcompete the omega-3s. And then downstream, you're going to promote all of the inflammation, compared to if you have a diet higher in the omega-3s, like the canola oil, the walnuts, the green leafy veggies, or here where we're actually getting in the EPA and the DHA from fish, seaweeds, seafood, then you're promoting actually the anti-inflammatory cascade. And so everyone wants that, right? Less inflammation. And then so I want to do a quick breakdown, or I guess highlight. EPA is really great for heart health. So that's what we always talk about when cardiovascular is, like, in fish oil. And then we have DHEA, which even on here specifically talks about brain, the retina, and the testes. It's so incredibly important for brain health that I actually recommend it for patients during pregnancy, for when the fetus's brain, when the baby's brain is being developed, because it's so important for that brain development. Okay. And now let's talk phytonutrients. So phytonutrients is all the plant chemicals. And they actually come color-coded. So yay, makes it a little bit easier. This is where eating, the rainbow comes from, because all the different colors of the food are actually different phytonutrients or phytochemicals. So the plant world is rich in COX inhibitors. And if you've heard of a COX inhibitor, that's basically aspirin. Aspirin was developed from willow bark. So willow bark, the active ingredient from is a salicylic acid or aspirin. So that's a main COX-2 inhibitor, and it came from plants. And so all the rest of the plant kingdom also have different phytonutrients. So let's talk about some of them. So first, though, before we talk about it, we need to know why is it so important for all of the phytonutrients for us to take in. Oops. It's because of oxidative stress, or reactive oxygen species. So oxidative stress actually means it's the balance or the imbalance, more accurately, between reactive oxygen species, or ROS, and antioxidants. That's where the plants come in. So if you have more more reactive oxygen species or free radicals, then you're going to have more stress on the body. So we naturally produce reactive oxygen species in our body. Every time that we make ATP, the powerhouse from the mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell, we actually will generate reactive oxygen species, which are very unstable, and they lead to inflammation and cell destruction. So we don't want that. So some normal ways we have we create the ROS is from the immune system, just from the metabolism, mitochondria, like I already talked about. And then we also get it from outside sources, radiation, chemicals, pathogens. Also when we cook our foods, depending on how we cook them, means that we can have more reactive oxygen species in them or less. So this is like the charred foods, whenever, especially the meats, when they're really burned, then you're gonna create more reactive oxygen species. So we don't want that either. All right, so why is it so important to limit our ROSs? Because as you can see here, the negative effects are pretty significant. It means DNA and RNA, our literal backbones, our genetic backbone gets changed by the reactive oxygen species. It's kind of like a toddler going around just pulling apart all the things having heyday because they're just going unchecked. And so we want to make sure they get checked by antioxidants, so we don't have the genetic mutations, so we don't have our genes being unstable. And let's talk about the next one. Oh, okay, talking really fast, I feel like. All right, so phytonutrients are, again, derived from plants. It's actually the chemicals that they make in order to protect themselves from infection, from disease, etc. And again, they act as antioxidants. And what they do is they will wrangle up all of the reactive oxygen, these are the free radicals, so that you're not having all of that cell destruction. That's a good thing. I don't like my cells being harassed and destroyed. You probably don't either. So that means we need to intake all these antioxidants. So let's talk about some. So terpenes. Terpenes are the yellow, the orange, and the red plant pigments. So the two main ones are going to be the carotenoids and the limonoids. So with the carotenoids, that is carrots, and we all know that there's so much benefits with carrots or the carotenoid, because what they do is they help with vitamin A synthesis. And so, vitamin A, incredibly helpful for your eye health. And again, because they're an antioxidants, they help to sequester any of those wandering reactive oxygen species. The one I really want to talk in particular, though, about is lycopene. So lycopene is the main constituent or the main phytonutrient, phytochemical within tomatoes. So it's so important because they have been shown to actually decrease the risk of cancer, and particularly prostate cancer, lung, and stomach cancer. So having plenty of tomatoes in your diet can be helpful for that. And again, the rest of the carotenoid, the whole carotenoid family do have the same, some like anti-cancer or anti-tumor properties, mainly because, right, they act as a antioxidant so that you're not having all the cell destruction and the changes to your DNA, and that, which is part of the cause of cancers. The other thing we want to talk about is with the carotenoid family, there's also, other foods is actually, so obviously the yellow and the orange and the red, but also the dark leafy greens. So the dark leafy greens have carotenoids, but because they're so rich in the chlorophyll, they will actually, mask that darker, the yellow and the orange and the red colors. And that's it for the lycopene. Let's talk about the limonoids. So that's all in the citrus family. So they actually enhance detoxification. So they help with your liver to get rid of all of the crap, all of the toxins within your body. So they enhance both phase 1 and phase 2 detoxification. So it's in both parts of the pathway. And of course, you know the benefits of oranges or vitamin C. And so that's also with another component that's in there. And so the limonoids also are anti-cancerous. They're antibacterial, antifungal, anti-malarial, and antiviral. So very useful for so many different things. And next here is the phenols. So that is going to be your blue-red, and your violet plant pigments, such as blueberries, apples, onions, etc. So the flavonoids, the main one, the anthocyanins, again, those are the blue-red and the blueberries. And they nope, that's not what I want to say. Okay, and then quercetin is actually the one I really want to highlight. So quercetin, I use that flavonoid for so many different things. I use it for the gut health. So quercetin actually helps with the GI integrity. It helps with allergies because it's a histamine stabilizer or mast cell stabilizer, which means that you're not going to have that histamine get released to cause your allergy symptoms. So apples, onions are rich in them. Other phenols are the isoflavones, the phytoestrogens, which are in flax seeds. I really love flax seeds because they also have the fiber. So you get the fiber, which what we talked about before, right, helps to bind excess cholesterol. It helps to bind up excess estrogens and hormones. It also gives you the phytoestrogen, so really useful for women because what it does actually will bind up or help to promote depending on what you need in the body. And then there's also genistein, which is from soybeans. Let's talk about thiols. So thiols are sulfur containing. It's all the cruciferous veggies like broccoli, cauliflower, kale, cabbage. And these ones are really helpful for detoxification. And so this is one of the common ones that we'll use as part of a actual detoxification protocol. All right, let's talk spices. So spices, cooking with spices, we have an abundant source of, a credible source of phytonutrients. They're actually very concentrated. And so when we cook with spices, we're getting all of those different phytonutrients and what we want to activate them first. And the way that we do that is by roasting them. So if you get the whole spice, you're going to roast it. You can do that in a cast iron skillet, works great. Until it's fragrant, and then you're going to grind them because it helps to disperse or open up more of those phytonutrients, the phytochemicals. So I want to talk about some in particular, and one quick thing about the roasting until fragrant and then the grinding, that should all be less than 10 minutes. So if you're taking longer than that, you're probably over roasting your spices. All right, so let's talk about turmeric. So turmeric, I use it for so many different things. Turmeric is anti-cancerous, it's strongly anti-inflammatory, which you may or may not know. I'll actually use it in high doses for patients with inflammatory bowel disease because it can be just that effective. I also love it for joint pains and muscle pains because it brings down that inflammation and helps with the pain management. Turmeric is actually synergized with black pepper. So what that means is with the black pepper, it will actually enhance the absorption of turmeric, which is why so often when in traditions, in Indian traditions, right, that you are heavily use a turmeric, they almost always have black pepper with it. They also very commonly have a fat associated, most commonly coconut milk. And so you have coconut milk, black pepper, and turmeric. That's actually the ingredients for golden milk. When you put those all together, they all enhance the absorption of the main constituent in turmeric, which is the curcumin. And so when you intake that, you don't get the same dosing as with like capsules, but you still get a lot of different phytonutrients. What I love about using the spice is that you get all of the constituents, not just the active one, which is what's commonly in the supplements and things like that. And so with, when you have them together, the turmeric, the black pepper, and some sort of fat, it enhances the absorption. So it's going to make it more effective to decrease your pains and all that. Now, black pepper is also really helpful for so many different things, which is probably a good reason that a good thing that it's so heavily it's a heavily used spice. So black pepper actually acts as a biofilm disruptor. So a biofilm is essentially something that, so let me step back. So what a biofilm is you know, when you haven't brushed your teeth in a little bit and you get that film a little bit like grimy, you're like, don't like that way that feels. That's actually a biofilm. But it's a healthy biofilm because you brush your teeth and it goes away. So a unhealthy biofilm essentially can happen within the gut. And so we have all the bacteria within our gut that does the same thing like the bacteria in our mouth. And so they create a home. And so most often the home is like a straw hut. And so we can throw antimicrobials at it and the straw home gets torn down essentially, or the critters inside their straw home get affected and then we can knock them out. The unfortunate thing is that sometimes the biofilms are not as helpful. They're actually more detrimental. So those are going to be the biofilms are created then by the bad bacteria. And what they do is instead of having a straw home, they will build more like a fortress. And because they build a fortress with like a whole moat in the whole thing, that's how I envision it anyways. We throw the antimicrobials at it and nothing happens because they're very well protected in their home. So what we have to do is tear down the home. The way we tear down the home is with a biofilm disruptor, such as black pepper. So having black pepper in your diet can actually help with your digestion, especially with those with like chronic infections, or also help to prevent getting a chronic infection because you're constantly tearing down the biofilm. And so the other thing with black pepper and turmeric is that when they're used together on your meats in particular, they help to slow down or decrease the glycation byproducts from your cooking. So you know how a few slides ago I talked about how reactive oxygen species can be created by the way that we cook our meats because it's that char, that burnt aspect. And so if we put spices on them, it will actually decrease the reactive oxygen species that we're getting from our food. So not only is it healthier for us, it actually tastes better too. All right, let's talk cinnamon. So cinnamon is really fantastic for so many different things. I personally love the taste. And what cinnamon is great for, one of the main things I use it for is actually for blood sugar stabilization. So it's really fantastic for diabetes, pre-diabetes, or just blood sugar regulation. And I think in the last webinar, I talked a little bit about how with COVID-19, having and if not, here's a recap. For COVID-19, there's been clear association that if you have higher blood sugar levels, whether that's pre-diabetes or actual diabetes, you there is a 7 times increased risk of landing into the ICU. So what that means is we want to stabilize blood sugars. And cinnamon can help do that. And so using cinnamon, it helps. There's so many different constituents within cinnamon, so it's kind of hard to figure out exactly which one is causing the blood sugar stabilization, but we do know that it does have that effect. And it also tastes delicious. All right, let's see. What? And so the biggest takeaway with spices is use all of them, as many as, and a variety, because they all have different properties, different phytonutrients and phytochemicals that you want to put into your food, into your body, because it just gives you, again, concentrated doses of your protection against cell destruction, cell death, which also means anti-cancerous. And so we want to protect ourselves from all of that things by having more phytonutrients, more plants, more veggies, and spices. With that, let's talk about your plate or serving sizes. Because there's so many different things. So you probably are familiar with the food pyramid. That has been taken away a long time ago because it was terrible. Totally. Well, this is a much better option. So here's a few different ones. Oops. Okay, so choose my plate. They have it broken down. I'm going to tell a little bit about what I don't like about these ones, and then we're going to go into the one that I really like. So the choose my plate, that's the one that's currently the recommendation with the USDA. And you can see that they recommend half your plate in fruits and vegetables, which I definitely agree with. The grains, they don't specify what kind of grains. I really prefer the ones that have the bran, meaning like brown rice or anything that still has that hulls. And then about a quarter of your plate is protein. And then of course they highlight dairy, which I don't really care too much for. And then here, this one is actually a different pyramid. I'm also just assuming you can see my cursor. And so with this one, it says drink mostly water, which I love. It has much, highlights really eating more vegetables. And then you have your protein sources, and then you have less of like the sweets and things like that. And then very rarely you have the alcohol, the sugar drinks. And then over here is actually, on that bottom right-hand corner is all a pyramid of the Mediterranean diet. And so they are more heavily on the bread, the pasta, the cereals, then the vegetables, and then the meat, the fish. And then again, that top part is the lowest amount with your fat, your oils, your sugars, your sweets, etc. This is the one that I really like. So this is the Healthy Plate from Harvard. So what I like about it is you can see that it looks really similar to the My Plate government recommendation, except they've expanded a little bit. So instead of dairy, they highlight water, which yes, please drink water. And then they also talk about coffee, drinking it with little or no sugar, because as we talked about last week, sugar is extremely inflammatory. And so you want to limit it. The other thing is, again, limiting your milk, your dairy, and your juice, because the juices, they don't have the fiber, so you're just going to spike your blood sugar, and then the fiber is not there to even it out. So, right, it's basically like getting just straight up sugar, which is probably why it tastes so delicious. And then, right, on the whole grains, they really emphasize here the variety of the whole grains and limiting refined grains like white rice and white bread, because they don't have the bran, which again makes them act more like a simple carbohydrate, which is going to again spike your blood sugar and then cause increase your risk for diabetes. And then your protein. So protein should be about the size of your fist or about a quarter of your plate. And then you want to choose between fish, poultry, beans, nuts, limit the red meat, the cheeses. And then you want to avoid the bacon, the cold meats, and other processed meats because they're higher in the nitrates, which are more inflammatory, which means they're more likely to have the omega-6s or the arachidonic acid, and they also have higher of the glycation byproducts just by the nature of the way that they were cooked and processed, which then means you're introducing more reaction oxygen, more ROS, more free radicals into your body. And then what I want to mention about, again, with proteins is if you're with your proteins, you can have the grain fed, but if you do the grain fed meats, what you want to do is strain the fat, because that, again, is where all of the toxins are stored. And so you can kind of be more budget friendly by getting those conventional grown, just take out the fat. Or you can choose to do the grass-fed, and then you can keep the fat because it's healthier, because it actually has a little bit more of the omega-3s and the omega-6 and 9s compared to the grain-fed versions of them. Next is, let's focus on the vegetables. So with the vegetables, you want variety, right? Again, because you want to get all of those different phytonutrients because they all do different things. And so you want a little bit of all of them. And so variety is the name of the game. If you can eat seasonal, even better. The side note, though, is that potatoes and French fries, they don't count as a vegetable because, right, they are basically simple carbohydrates, which are going to spike your blood sugar and then, right, increase your risk of diabetes, and we don't want that. And so you want to get more of those complex carbohydrates, the foods that have the lower glycemic index, the lower glycemic load. And then fruits. So fruits, again, you want to eat plenty of fruits with all the different colors, and that's going to be a little bit smaller portion of food. Trick is, if you have fruit at the end of your meal, it will actually increase satiety, it'll make you fuller longer just because you ended on something sweet. And by ending on something sweet, I don't mean like candy, but a fruit. If you could do berries, that's going to be even better, because if you remember or recall, berries are one of the fruits that have one of the lowest glycemic index. So they're not going to spike your blood sugar as high. And then fats, healthy oils is what's so incredibly important. So like olive oil, canola oil, whether that's for cooking or for salads or at the table, you want to limit butter because that's higher in the saturated fats or the arachidonic acid, aka all the inflammatory fats. And so we don't want to be emphasizing that as much as compared to like if you just use olive oil. And then what I want to talk about quickly is with the fats, when we're cooking with oils, we want to make sure that we're cooking with oils that are appropriate for the heat that we're using on our skillets or on the stovetop. So avocado oil is fantastic for high heat. So if you're actually like sauteing and cooking, you want to be using avocado oil, or you can use coconut oil, which also has a medium to high heat. Cooking with olive oil is a no-no because it has a low heat tolerance. So what that means is if you put it on something that's on the stove, it's going to just smoke. And so we don't want to do that, because when it smokes, it makes the oils rancid. When the oils go rancid, that means you're not having all of those healthy benefits. Instead, you're actually creating more reaction oxygen species. We don't want that. So the main oils I use personally is mostly avocado oil, and then I use olive oil for massaging like kale, for salads or vinaigrette dressings. Fantastic, because you get those healthy oils in and it's more moist. All right, and with that, I'm gonna see if we have someone. Derek. I'm going to let Derek talk real quick about a cooking demonstration that we're doing on Friday. Let's see. Derek, there you are. Can you? Can't unmute you.
How'd I do?
Yeah. Is that working? Oops. Ah. Oh, you can hear him. I can't hear him.
You can hear me?
Oh, I can now. Great.
Oh yeah, I can't get myself off where I could show my face. But yeah, hi everybody. My name is Derek Thompson-Estia. We actually have a healthy cooking company where we do cooking classes. We work with a lot of naturopaths, physicians, dietitians to teach people how to make like fast, healthy, delicious meals on a busy Tuesday night. And what I love working with Dr. Krisha is that she teaches you all the education about like foods and how to eat things. We're the people that translate it so you could actually be successful to cook for you and your family. And the people that we cook for is like two people or a single, somebody in the house, or that you have one person that eats a particular diet, but you have two kids, but you don't want to spend too much time in the kitchen, but you want them to be eating a healthy meal. And so we're going to be doing that with you guys on Friday at 4 o'clock, about maybe an hour or so, and tell you guys a little bit about like how to make fast meals, but also how food and flavor go hand in hand. So excited to be with you guys, and it's going to be interactive so you can ask lots of questions. And I'm going to be trying to make it as close as what you guys learned today as possible. Hopefully I don't mess up, but excited to share.
Thank you, Derek. I'm so super excited. Derek actually came to my house a couple days ago and helped do a little cooking demonstration for me, and it's amazing. He's got such great, quick and easy, very nutritious recipes. He actually made me a vegetable lasagna that I think was, what, 5 ingredients, Derek?
Yeah, just about.
It was absolutely delicious. And so hopefully you'll be able to join us this Friday at 4 p.m. The Zoom meeting ID is on the slide. And then I will also be emailing out the link as well in the emails. So hopefully you're signed up for that. And with that, I wanted to mention that the week challenge is all about drinking water first thing in the morning, because we want to stay hydrated. And we want to go ahead and stimulate the bowel movement, because digestion is incredibly important, which we'll learn more about next week. And with that, again, if you learned something new, which hopefully you did, I hope that you'll send the replay to 3 friends to share their knowledge. And now I'll go ahead and take questions. You go ahead and either type them in, if you can type them into the chat, that'd be great. And if there are no questions, then that'd be fine too. Let me check Q&A. Okay, so Sue had asked what makes a complete protein. So a complete protein is when you have all of the essential and the non-essential amino acids. So meaning it has all of the amino acids that exist. So that's what makes a complete protein. So that's where animal protein comes in, because animals need all of that. And then you have the incomplete proteins, or the plant proteins, which are typically missing one of them, which makes them an incomplete protein because it's just not a complete source. And then question was, should you always pair turmeric with black pepper? So if you can tolerate black pepper, yes, because it does synergize and it makes it more, increases the absorption. The same reason you actually want to have it with fat. And so I almost always put some sort of fat, whether that's coconut oil, coconut milk. I tend to do coconut based because when we're talking about, so when we talk about, dang it, sorry, I got distracted by a question. When we're cooking, we want to have the spices that are kind of close to within the region. So meaning Indian food, right, uses a lot of the things that are found within there, like the turmeric and the black pepper. And so that's the same reason. So in terms of vegetarian, so getting the right amount of protein is really tricky. And so beans and rice together actually make a complete protein. It's a complete source. You just have to have a lot of it in order to pull them out the same amino acids. If you're struggling with getting the protein, I often will recommend protein supplements to patients because it's just an extra way to make sure you're getting all of it. And we'll talk about proteins for or amino acid therapy when we talk about mind and in particular for depression, things like that. Okay. Someone had asked about basically water will help with all the areas except connection. Yes. Technically, it could also help for connection if you're sharing water. But yes, it does help with literally everything. Exercise also will do that. And then besides avocado oil, what other oils do you cook with? Other than avocado oil, I'll use coconut oil, but I really only use those two. And then I actually ended up getting the cooking set or cookware that Derek was kind of talking about, and you don't need oil when you cook with that, which is really fantastic. So it's actually kind of decreased my excess use of oils. And one of the reasons that's helpful is because if the heat gets too high, those oils can turn rancid, and we don't want to do that. So what kind of herbs can you roast and what temperature? So you'll just do it at a medium-low temperature on your stovetop, on your like a cast iron skillet. But you can roast like any of your herbs really. So like let me think. Like anise is a good one. You can actually do like black pepper if it's the whole thing. You can do even like sesame seeds, you can do it that way. And then there's so many different ones. I'll end up putting a link in the next email that I'll send out tomorrow for like a spice guide. On that same email, I'll put a list of a good list for the glycemic load of various foods. And then, okay. Oh yes, cumin and cardamom are also absolutely fantastic for roasting. Thanks for that, Shelley. You know, hard for me to think sometimes. I'm on the spot. Great. Okay. Any other questions for me? All right. With that then, we're just about on time. I'll just give you the reminder, please drink your 8 ounces of water first thing in the morning, and then continue to do that throughout the day. All right, it's been an absolute pleasure, and I hope that you've learned some wonderful new things and some takeaways as well. All right. Oh, I think I just got a new, oh, perfect. Thank you. Thank you as well. All right, take care, everyone.